¿Estamos? ¿Estamos? Good afternoon. Welcome, everybody. We are ready to start. Please take your seats. Okay, so great to see so many people, so many familiar faces. And let me start by welcoming everybody to this very exciting session on smart ports and logistics, where we are going to talk a lot about the critical role that they play in enabling productive-led growth, decarbonization, creating more and better jobs in a changing global context. I am Marcela Silva. I am the Regional Director for Infrastructure for Latin America and the Caribbean region at the World Bank. And I am truly very happy to be moderating this conversation today. I think that this is a really important topic because the issues that we are going to be talking are at the heart of what our region needs to compete, to grow, and to create better opportunities for millions of people. As we know, 80% of global goods move by sea. So ports are a critical gateway for exports, for competitiveness, for economic growth. And the Latin American region, and I already apologized to my panelists. I said that I was going to be a little bit biased for Latin America, but this is a global event. The Latin American region is not different. Our region relies heavily on maritime trade for its exports of agriculture products, commodities, and manufactured goods. Most importantly, ports and logistics are critical enablers for LAC, Latin America and the Caribbean region, to become a key player in the supply of decarbonized products and to integrate into green value chains. So this is really an opportunity for the region to take advantage of its largely clean electricity matrix, of its abundant renewable energy sources, about this huge potential for green hydrogen, and for its abundant critical minerals, all of which is of the essence to support the global energy transition. So I do take a lot of interest in this topic for precisely that reason. So the problem is that despite the centrality of transport to our region's aspirations and opportunities, we face some of the highest logistics costs worldwide that represent between 16 and 26% of GDP, and which is roughly twice the average of OECD economies. For some goods, particularly in the Caribbean, but not only in the Caribbean, logistics costs can represent up to 35% of product values. So these are not marginal inefficiencies. These are a structural drag on our aspirations, our competitiveness, and our growth, and ultimately a bottleneck or a challenge on the well-being of people who depend on trade for their jobs and for their livelihoods. The good news is that, and this is what makes this session very exciting, is that there is a bright side to this story. The sector is undergoing profound transformations, and that is precisely where we see a lot of opportunities. Ports today are no longer points where goods arrive and depart. They are increasingly becoming complex logistics ecosystems that integrate physical infrastructure, clean energy systems, digital technologies, and multimodal networks, transport networks. So ultimately, the trajectory and the outcomes that this transformation will have we'll need to think about how to address three major aspects that are going to become the anchor around which we are going to focus our conversation today. The first one is how to improve efficiency and resilience in an increasingly competitive global logistics environment where supply chains, these disruptions from pandemics, from climate events, from geopolitical shifts are becoming more frequent and costly, which is leaving ever more so very little margins for inefficiencies. So what is happening in the Middle East is showing us once again how globalized the sector is. And it's a reminder to all of us of how quickly these shocks can lead to uncertainty for traders, for investors, and ultimately to increased costs for all of us. The second point is on accelerating decarbonization in line with global and regional climate commitments. And this is no longer a future aspiration. This is happening now as carriers, shippers, regulators, investors are already shifting their expectations and reshaping their views and requirements for the ports that they work with. The third, and perhaps the most complex one to address, is how to ensure that this technological transformation that we are seeing that is happening and the modernization creates high quality jobs and broader economic opportunities for all, rather than deepening the existing inequalities. So how do we become very intentional about who benefits from this transformation is a critical element. So with this context in mind, our panel today brings a unique perspective from Spain, a country that occupies a geographic strategic position as a gateway between Europe, Africa, and the Americas, and that has invested huge amount of resources in making its ports amongst the most competitive and innovative in the world. We are very fortunate to have with us a distinguished group of speakers that can talk to the expertise that Spanish institutions have built in port planning, innovation, and engineering, and very importantly, bring relevant, concrete examples of how this knowledge and expertise is already translating and being implemented in many of the developing countries that we work. We will hear some examples, including from the port of Callao in Peru. And so this is make it very, very exciting. So with that, let me welcome our panelists, Inés, Manuel, Juan Manuel, Javier, and Jan, to this panel. And really thank you very much for investing this time with us and being here with us today. And to get directly into the conversation and to not make mistakes in introducing yourselves, I would allow you to introduce yourselves as I make the first question for each of you. So please, I will start with Manuel, who is the Planning Director of Puertos del Estado. And do please take a few seconds to introduce yourself. What would you bring to the table? Why are you here today? And as you do that, after that, tell us a little bit about the development process of the port infrastructure in Spain, how this has laid its foundations for the progress of the sector over the last 20 years. Tell us a little bit about, for those who are going through that process or starting to think about that process, is there a priority order of tackling the different issues? What comes first and what not? So Manuel, welcome, and please introduce yourself.
So thank you very much, Marcela, for your kind presentation. And thank you for inviting me and Puertos del Estado to be present here in this panel today. And first of all, let me introduce myself. I'm Manuel Arana. I'm the Planning and Development Director of Puertos del Estado. Puertos del Estado is a national agency depending on the Ministry of Transport and Mobile and Sustainable Mobility in Spain. And we basically manage and coordinate the whole national port system. The national port system, depending on the national government, is 46 port managed by 28 port authorities, and we are managing right now approximately 565 million tons, including more than 18 million TEUs. We are number one in Europe in TEUs operation and also in container connectivity, and also 42 million passengers approximately, including 14 million of cruise passengers. So that's our rough figures to see who we are. And first of all, thank you very much for your first question about infrastructure, because it's a sector where I come from. I feel very comfortable talking about infrastructure, and thank you, because it brings me the opportunity to share the experience that we had in Spain in the past 2 decades. I would say approximately from 2000 to 2015 or something like that, 1.5 decades that we develop. I would say an historic process of upgrading the Spanish national system. We develop a huge infrastructure during this period. Almost every port in Spain increased their capacity. We almost duplicate our site in terms of capacity in 15 years. So it's a very short term to do that effort, and I think that we have settled the foundation for the next decade talking about infrastructure, and we are talking about ports and imports. It's transport, and infrastructure is the basis. If you do not have infrastructure, you have almost nothing, and probably if you don't have infrastructure, the rest of the topics that we will discuss during this panel will not be affordable. So perhaps the first conclusion is how we do that in that short period of time. I have one idea, that is because we have a portfolio and a pipeline of projects undergoing at the beginning of the century, and that's the reason, because we could do it in a very short period of time, because we're talking, as you know, about infrastructure, and infrastructure takes not years but even decades to develop. So you have to be prepared very much in advance to face the challenges of the next decade. So it's something that we have to take into consideration. What did we do during that period? Okay, we, from the public administration, we basically focus our effort in building new infrastructure, basic infrastructure. And I'm talking about breakwaters, I'm talking about quay walls and reclamation, freight terminals, capital dredging. And that's what we do from a public point of view. We also could do it because I think that at least a reflection that I have many years ago, because let's say the Spanish marine or environment, we're all aligned in the same direction, and we have all a goal that we have to do this in a very short period of time, and we were all aligned and we did it. And I'm including not just administration, of course, we were in the pole position of the development when we had this plan, but also from all the private sector, including consulting companies, not just engineering companies, obviously engineering companies, but not only, also consultant companies specialized, for example, in sustainability and environment. Obviously, construction companies, you know, the Spanish construction company are very well known all around the world, because they work with a very good quality. And I also would like to underline the collaboration of institutions such as laboratories, university, or research centers. And why do I say that? Because during that period, and taking into consideration one of the main topic of the event, during that period we generate a large amount of knowledge. We generate a large amount of knowledge that is now being used in some places in the world. So we are exporting knowledge via a Spanish company that were involved during that period, and they are establishing these companies in a local, in different countries, in a local way. So transforming these new countries, using that knowledge and passing that knowledge to new people. So I think that's a good idea, very aligned with the objectives and the main topic of the event. And also, I have to say that during that process, we have been accompanied by private sector. That's very important, especially private operators, because in Spain, according to the law, the port authorities can provide infrastructure, but cannot provide port services. It's forbidden by law. You can only provide, from the public sector, you can only provide port services if there's no private company that wants to provide that service. So that means that we have a double role. We have the role of the administration, public entities, developing infrastructure, and the role of the private companies operating this infrastructure and investing for the provision of these services. And that means that in the long term, during this 20 years period, the balance between the public and the private investment is more or less balanced. So it's more or less 50-50. So it means that we, from the public point of view, invest one euro, and there's another euro invested by private company. And I think that it's a good example of successful PPP experience. Obviously, we are basically, the main tool that we use is the concession. The main tool is the concession. And let me spend a couple of minutes about the future, because I have spent 5 minutes talking about the past, but was the future. And I think that the challenges in Spain, at least, is probably are probably different than we had in the past. No more massive infrastructure generation is needed in the country. I'm talking about massive infrastructure, but also we need to continue generating infrastructure, but probably we will continue developing new terminals, especially upgrading existing terminals. That's an interesting idea, also linked to resiliency and to adaptation, because the market is changing in the maritime sector, is changing, and you have to adapt to this new market. And you have infrastructure, perhaps you have built 20, 25 years ago, but they're still there, but the new requirements are different. So we need to update or upgrade this infrastructure. And this, talking about, for example, engineer or construction, is a different market, because it's not a greenfield project. It's project that should be defined in a very precise way, tailor-made, and with a lot of knowledge. So these kind of projects add very value from a engineering or knowledge point of view. And three main lines for the investment in the next year. The first one is that it's very important, land connectivity. Land connectivity is critical, because the competition right now is not from port to port, it's from door to door, and logistic chains are competing. And in that competition, obviously ports are very important, but also connection of railway and roads from the port to the inside part of the country is a key point. We are investing so much in that topic. And also, you mentioned it during your previous intervention, sustainability and digitalization and innovation is a key point. And I'm sure it's going to be a topic that will be discussed later on. So I finish here for my first intervention, and I will continue later. Thank you.
Okay, that's great, Manuel. Thank you so much. And then maybe if we have time, we will come back a little bit more on the lessons learned and recommendations on how to apply the Spanish experience to developing countries that are a little bit in the middle or maybe at earlier stages than when you are today. But your point was a good segue to what I was going to ask to Juan Manuel Diaz, Head of Innovation of the Port Authority of Valencia. Juan Manuel, welcome. And as I said, also please tell us a little bit about yourself, and then can you talk to us about how do you see innovation complementing infrastructure development in order to make ports and logistics systems smarter? And where is the tendency going, and where do you see things evolving in that direction?
Thank you, Marcela. My name is Juan Manuel Diez. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer of the Port Authority of Valencia. First of all, thank you for inviting us today to share some experience of what we've been doing in Valencia. We manage 3 ports we are one of these 28 port authorities that was mentioned by Manuel. We manage 3 ports in the Mediterranean coast. We've been also developing infrastructure for the last years to have enough capacity and that allows us to manage. Now last year we managed 5.6 million TEUs. That made us the first Spanish container port and the 4th in Europe, and that is partly, of course, because of this effort in infrastructure development. But we are convinced that also innovation has a part in it, okay? Because we've been always convinced that innovation was key for the competitiveness of the port. We were one of in fact, the first Spanish port to have an innovation department that lately evolved to a foundation. We have our own foundation for innovation, and that allows us for example, at the beginning of this century, to develop one of the first port community systems really functioning in Europe, and also to develop automation of different processes, for example, for cargo clearance. And if you're thinking about if you start moving, when we start the century, we have less than 1 million TEUs, and we multiply by 5 the traffic. So you need all this innovation if you really want to cope with this increase of traffic. So we have innovation in our DNA, okay? And we are convinced that this is part of our success. But we know that times are changing. Manuel also mentioned that disruptions and the volatility we were used in the port sector to live in very stable environment, but this is not the case anymore. So we have to be ready to adapt. And we understand the best tool for adapting is, again, innovation. So that's why we recently, 3 years ago, we decided to launch our own initiative for open innovation. So we decided, because we are convinced that we have the challenge that we have ahead. Probably we have to, for solving them, to have to open our minds, and also probably to attract innovators from other sectors to give us some answers to these challenges. So we created this Open Top Hub, and as a way to connect the challenges, not only for the Port Authority, but more important, for the port community, for our port tenants, the terminals, the hauliers, how we can help them to solve and to compete in this very, very unstable environment. And so with this tool, we wanted to attract these new ideas, but we also realized that we had a problem with financing and escalating these new ideas. So together with Puertos del Estado, we created in a Spanish level the Ports 4.0 fund, which is a fund which is created and developed and financed by the port authorities, and that is developing. Well, it's planned to develop when you finish the last call that is for proposals that we have this year. We will mobilize around 70 million euros to help these startups with solutions to test them. First of all, test them in ports with the port sector, and then finance also this effort to bring the technology and the solutions to the market, because we really want market solutions that can help us to compete and to make to make more efficient the Spanish port system, and of course the port of Valencia. Well, we are also convinced that this in innovation, collaboration is a must. So together with other innovation hubs in the world, we are creating the Port Innovator Network, where we have more than 10 partners in worldwide, in Europe, and but also in the Americas, here in the United States, in Argentina, in Brazil. And with this idea of helping these new solutions to find new markets and also to share and learn from others. And well, we are very, very much open to collaboration. I'm calling all of you. If you really have an idea, or please contact us, because we want to test if it's possible in the port. And also, if you want to, we can share our experience regarding, for example, our innovation hub or the ports 4.0. Which I think is a success for the Spanish port system. And well, we are convinced that this also one way, this openness is also rewarding, and we are convinced that it will help us to compete more.
Excellent, Juan Manuel and Diaz. And maybe later on, you can give us a little bit of concrete examples of some of those innovations. No, what are the type of things that are coming from these innovation hubs? Or maybe you can take 1 minute to give us 1 or 2 examples.
Well, I can give you, well, for example, we've been trying different applications of AI to the port sector. So we've been working, for example, with the port terminals to make more efficient some of the other processes of the cargo handling in the terminals. And we have having very promising solutions. Or, for example, we've used artificial intelligence to ensure the custom clearance on real time through the port. So the way that we can also the railway leaving the port on real time surveyed to be sure that the cargo is moving properly.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Now, maybe let me move to Javier Pascual, Global Director for Consultancy and New Technologies in CENED. So Javier, same proposition, 30 seconds introduction, and then talk to us a little bit about or share your views on how new technologies can be applied to improve competitiveness and efficiency of ports from your perspective.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon to everybody. First of all, I would like to thank the organization for inviting us. Well, I'm Javier Pascual. I'm the Global Director for Consulting and New Technologies in CENED. CENED is a global consulting and engineering firm that is based in a lot of countries worldwide, and that invests a lot in R&D. And due to that, we were able to be one of the first companies in the world to develop and implement a digital twin in a port. Okay, and this is what I wanted to explain to you as an example. And I have chosen Callao in Peru because normally when we talk about technology and digital twins, people think on, let's say, Europe or North America, no? But I think that this is absolutely available worldwide and it can be implemented in any country, okay? So let's move to the beginning of this history, that is in 2019, so 7 years ago. A terminal operator in Callao, Colas, we were developing with them a master planning. And well, I'm also a professor at the university. I'm teaching ports design and management at the university. And I always suggest to the clients, no? So, well, we are developing a master plan, but how you will manage the terminal in the future, okay? Because I always say to my pupils that they cannot design a port in the same way that I did 30 years ago, okay, when I started working. So now we have technology, and this technology has to be applied in a day-by-day basis, no? So, okay, we are developing a new port in Peru, but it has to be managed according to the 21st century, not in the 20th century, no? So then we start working together with the client in developing the use cases and why we need a digital twin, no? So, and the main purpose at the beginning of this digital twin was to improve the maintenance, okay? This terminal is an old one, more than 100 years implemented, so they had a lot of problems with utilities to know where the things were, and the maintenance team had a lot of troubles. So we decided to implement and to design a digital twin, first of all, for the improvement of the maintenance, okay? To reduce the time that the team goes to a library to look for the drawings and to see where are the utilities, the water or whatever. Then this was starting to be used. And then the operation team said, okay, if you are using this for maintenance, then maybe we can also use for operation and to do a kind of coordination between the operations and the maintenance, no? To decide, for example, when is the best moment to do a specific maintenance operation, like improving the pavements or whatever, in order to reduce the affections to the operations, okay? The operations of the vessel, the operations of the trucks in the gates. So then the tool, the digital twin, started to be used by the maintenance teams and the operation teams. And then once the operation teams started to using this, then they appear a lot of use cases to improve the operations. So, and one of that is the booking system and how we integrate the booking system with the asset management system in order to decide what happens with the queues, for example, of the trucks outside the port, okay? If anybody knows Callao port in Peru, it's one of the more congested ports in Latin America, with a lot of queues outside the port that provoke some kind of troubles like security, okay? There is a point of security outside the port. And also we wanted to reduce the queues there. So we integrate the booking system, so the terminal knows perfectly when the trucks will arrive to the port, and they can decide and they can give orders to the trucks that they can stop outside the port in order to reduce the queues. So we integrated the booking system with the terminal operation system, so we know when the vessels will arrive. Also, with all of this, we are reducing congestions, and also we are reducing CO2 emissions, okay? So this is a clear example from my point of view of how a digital solution like a digital twin is improving competitiveness, but also it's supporting the sustainability transition of a port, okay? And also there is another point, is that these digital solutions in a port is not like 100 years ago, no? That there was a lot of movement of cargo that is based on the human strong and the possibility of a lot of works done by mail, okay? But when we are talking about a digital solution, it can be done by anybody, okay? And this is something that it's very important. We have done a lot of training and capacity building to the team in Callao, and now there are a lot of women and a lot of new jobs that has been created, okay, due to these digital solutions. There are different skills, absolutely, nothing to do with the skills that were required in a port 20 or 30 years ago. But these new skills, it's also, I think it's improving the way that they are working right now. This is an example of how technology can affect the competitiveness of ports.
Excellent. So maybe a good example of not only more jobs, but better jobs, better paid jobs. Okay.
Absolutely.
Great. And do you have any, like from the top of your mind, any numbers on how this has helped to increase efficiency, reduce the costs, reduce transport time?
Well, I don't have to be honest, I don't have this figures because it's from our client, but I'm sure that they have improved a lot because they are asking us to put on service more use cases, and they are using a lot this. And this is something that now it's transferred to other ports in the world, okay? And I think that this is a success case of how we can implement technologies, not just in Europe or America, but also in developing countries like Peru.
Very good. Javier, thank you so much. Now I'm going to move to Ines Ferguson, Director of Business Development of TIPSA. Ines, great to have you here in this panel at the other corner. Please introduce yourself and share with us some examples of TIPSA's involvement in the development of port projects in Latin America and other parts of the world, if you have some. What would you highlight as the main value that the company brings or has brought to those developments?
Thank you, Marcela. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. So I'm Business Development Director at TIPSA Group. TIPSA is a global consulting engineering company working in the 5 continents and with a very strong presence in Latin America. We are 1,500 people in the region, and we have offices from Mexico down to Chile. So I will focus a little bit more on a Latin American experience, responding to your requests. So I wanted to share with you some of the value that we're bringing to our port experience in the region. And it's very much aligned with some of the opening, the messages and the opening speeches of the World Bank. So as a company having 20 years of experience in developing ports in different countries, we've been involved in Lázaro Cárdenas port in Mexico, and in Callao and Salaverry port in Peru, or Puerto Cortés in Honduras, San Antonio in Chile, and a long list of ports. We have evolved in the way we bring value to these projects. And I would like to highlight 4 elements. The first one is the creation of local capacities. So we have established in the region, in our local teams, the very specific knowledge hubs related to that infrastructure development. We're very much focused on infrastructure. And those knowledge hubs are now working regionally. So we have teams that are becoming specialized in geotech, water, drainage, environmental, and we don't no longer pull resources from Europe or from Spain or from international sources. We're really developing those local capacities to work in different ports in the region. And we're not only developing the technical skills, we're developing the managerial skills. So 20 years ago, when we started working, the 5 top positions in our projects would be covered by international experts. Right now, it's all local experts trained by us and with the capacities they have developed over these years. So this, we think, is not only about creating jobs, but really developing the technical and the managerial skills to be able to lead these projects. And linked to that, we have worked substantially on female leadership. So it turns out that in ports, we have more female senior project managers than male. So they have been involved in some of these projects. This started 15 years ago. They moved to the different countries, Chile, Peru, Honduras, Brazil, and they were holding these leadership roles in the projects. Of course, they faced resistance from the beginning. You know, it's let's say it's a difficult sector to work as a female, especially if you're in a leading role. And the experience has been outstanding. Their performance was very well considered. They have been complimented by clients in the different countries, and what we're mostly proud of is how they have inspired not only the female engineers in the client side, but also in our teams. And they have seen that this female leadership was possible, that it was real, and we get actually thank you notes from our clients worldwide saying, you know, we really appreciate this female leadership. It shows that it's possible. Then another value that we're bringing to the projects, of course, is related to the digital AI and the new tools. And we think they should be based on knowledge. So it's very important. We're working mostly with public sector infrastructure-related projects. They need to have knowledge before they can use or properly use technology. So we try to be completely technology agnostic and adapt the technological and the solutions that would be better fitted for each client in each case. So just to give you an example, we might, have a very sophisticated digital tool that would work for some clients, and in other cases, you might just bring, a mobile with a camera with augmented reality connected to a GIS model that would be able to identify all those hidden services and foundations and be able to do the maintenance work. So it doesn't really have to get very sophisticated. It has to be adapted to the knowledge and the capacity of the client. And I think we have a role to play. We need to consider those elements. And then finally, I would mention resilience. We're of course bringing the capabilities and knowledge to face the increasing climate resilience, working on the reuse of sediments, on coastal protection, reinforcing structures. But what we're telling clients is that resilience is not just about climate. It's really about being able to operate under any circumstance. And the challenges and the risks now are much broader. So you need to consider as well any disruption in the supply chain, in the power. You need to also design thinking about cybersecurity, even military attacks. So this is something that we really need to bring into the ports, consider them as a really sensitive piece of infrastructure, highly strategic, and that we need to bring better protection to this infrastructure in our designs. Thank you.
Thank you, Ines. Thank you so much. And with that, Jan, you are the global lead of maritime transport and ports for the World Bank Group. So you bring a lot of global experience, and so it's great for us to be able to hear from you from the work that you have done in different countries in developing context. Which solutions, digital or otherwise, you have found to be particularly impactful and relevant to help improve port performance? So over to you, Jan.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yeah, it's true. Before joining the bank last year, I worked 30 years for the United Nations in London, in Chile, in Geneva. And I understand I was brought here to complement this beautiful panel from Spain with some global perspective. So let me start with one example. For example, Spain. I wanted to compliment all what the colleague said was absolutely right. We just looked at the very latest data of the shipping network, and Spain is the country that has the highest number of direct connections in the container shipping network with other countries. 97 other countries have a direct service from and to Spain. Congratulations. Coming back to your question, like your global experiences, digitalization, I'd like to start out saying technological progress will never be as slow as today. Is it slow? No, it's not slow, but it's going to be even faster. So we do have hard data. We have the World Bank Container Port Performance Index. We have transport cost data sets. We work with others on shipping connectivity indices. And so there is actually some hard data that can show which of this technological progress, which reforms have stronger impacts, answering your question. Now, what we measure normally is initially a physical thing, like we measure the time ships spend in port or dwell time of containers, and so it's physical. But what really impacts how fast they get out of the port or in and out of the port for the ships is very much to do with digital solutions, arrival sequencing, anchorage rating, berth allocation, documentation, clearance, synchronization. All this is as much as possible done with digital solutions. So in this context, if you trying to think like what are the three top measures or ways that have shown to be relevant. First, some very basic operational digitalization, data visibility, just the basic berth planning. So one-on-one individual solutions, software solutions. Second group is more on the coordination part, trade single windows, maritime single windows, port community systems. Could spend hours discussing how they overlap, what's the difference, the definitions, but they have shown to be really important to measurably improve the logistics performance index or the CPPI, where you can actually see before and after introducing this type of thing. And one thing we found with these introductions, they also help reduce opportunities for corruption. The more a computer takes a decision the less likely it is that a human takes the decision. And the third example I wanted to bring here is automation. Now, automation, one has to be careful. I love automation. I think it's good. Why should a human have to do something if a machine can do it? Now, we can discuss philosophically, but so I thought, well, we had our CPPI data, and I knew from my hometown, Hamburg is very automated. So I compared Hamburg with Antwerp, which is less automated on the same component. Well, I have to admit, Antwerp actually improved more, has better CPPI than Hamburg. So can I do Control Z, undo? I don't want to mention this example, but it is really, in principle, logically, automation is positive, but it's difficult to actually measure it. There are many caveats to this. Last, coming back to the general point, experiences in terms of digitalization, we mentioned sustainability, we mentioned resilience. I think some of you here also have gray hair or not much hair, and remember the time when we went on a plane and there was an empty seat next to us. Yeah? Nowadays, there's so much yield management, it's so optimized that there's much less spare capacity. And when you go today, and you mentioned in the introduction what is happening in Iran, and the system overall, one could argue, is actually a little less resilient now than it was 20, 30 years ago, because we have optimized so much that there's very little spare capacity in the system. And that's a risk for all our optimization process. We have to keep in mind still to keep the system resilient and keep spare capacity. Thanks.
Well, very good. I am very conscious of time. We have already gone 35 minutes into our, more than 35 because we started earlier than 3. We have 25 more minutes and we still have another round that is one that I'm very interested in hearing from you on the energy transition and decarbonization and the role that ports have to play here. Because I said it at the beginning, this is where Latin American mind is coming for. And then I also want to talk a little bit about this very important topic that it is the role that ports have in creating more and better jobs. So we have these two very distinct additional group of questions. Plus, I also want to leave time for questions. So I was thinking about leaving time now, but I don't think that we will be able to do it if I stop after 8 questions. So maybe at the end, I'm going to try to leave 10 minutes for questions. So this next round, we will have to do much better on the time. And it's around this, the role of ports on the energy transition and decarbonization. So I'm going to start with you, Manuel, very quickly to share your perspective of what are the role of ports on the energy transition and some practical recommendations for developing countries that are thinking about their participation, integration into green value chains, like in Latin America.
Okay, I have cleared. I have 5 minutes for a topic that I could be speaking 5 hours, so I will try to summarize as much as possible. Okay, talking about the contribution to climate change mitigation, it's a hot topic for us. We have a developing plan ongoing in Puerto del Sao, based in the national port system, based in 3 basic pillars that I will try to summarize as quick as possible. The first one is reducing the carbon footprint in the port, and that's include for the first time the Port Authority, obviously the Port Authority, and we have different working lines. The first one is energy efficiency. Mm-hmm. That's something that is very important. Is it a contribution to climate change mitigation? Yes, I think so, because the greenest energy is the energy that has not been used. That's the greenest one. And also a second line is to increase the share of green energies, production of solar and wind energies inside the port for our own purpose. And also try to reduce the carbon footprint in the construction of new infrastructure. I told in my previous, during the introduction, that we basically create infrastructure. So that's the main source for of CO2 emission from our side. So we are working in that with new materials and green equipments, basically during the construction of our infrastructure. But also not just the port authority, but also the port operators. And I said before, okay, we are not port operators, but what can we do? We can do a lot of things as administration. For example, include green condition in the concession contracts. That's very interesting. Also, create a concession, for example, for generation of green energy imports, basically wind energy. But with just one question, that this energy must be used for port activities. We are not producing for outside, we produce for ourselves. And last but not least, very interesting from a financial point of view, tax discount. The greener, the cheaper. Okay, so that's what we are doing. Also, second pillar is to reduce the carbon footprint outside the port, because I said before that the supply chains are in competition, and several ideas. First of all, the short sea shipping, the promotion of short sea shipping as green transport mode. Another one is the promotion of rail transport. We are developing an investment plan from accessibility, land accessibility, especially rail accessibility, of 1,800 million euros. Basically, with destination to remove bottlenecks in accessibility. It's a very interesting project from a cost-benefit analysis, because with low investment you can achieve a high level of benefits. And of course, the OPS, the development of the onshore power supply. You know that obviously we are in Europe and we are under the legislation of the European Union, and in 2030 all of our ports will be ready for OPS in two basic segments: passengers, including cruise lines, and container sector. And it's a great challenge, not just from a technical point of view, but it's very difficult also with another aspect, such as upgrading a new capacity of electricity grid outside the port. That's a very important point. Legislation also provides the provision of a new service, because OPS is a brand new service, so we have to develop all the legal framework. And just to give you some figures, the consumption in electricity in the ports will multiply by 2, and the necessity of powers by 5 from 2024 to 2030 in just 6 years. So it's a huge challenge. And last but not least, the third pillar is to support the energy sector. That's something that we did with the refineries or with the LNG terminals in the past. And right now, the challenge is to produce and distribute new fuels. I think that the new fuels will be produced close to the ports for sure. Why? Because two main reasons. The first one is that the shipping lines will be heavy consumers of new fuels. And the second one is that the material that will not be used by the shipping lines will be exported. So the closer to the terminal, the better for the logistics.
Thank you, Manuel.
And that's it.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to call on my timekeeper, please, to help me be the rude person that is going to open the little, asking them to give 3 minutes so that they manage the time. And I don't want to be that person, so you are. Okay.
Okay, fortunately, as
Manuel,
also mentioned,
Puerto Valencia, lots of experience. What are you doing on the decarbonization challenge? Please complement.
Yes. Well, first of all, we decided in our strategic plan to become net zero emission in 2035. So that's a big commitment, and that's why we arrived to that commitment. We have 3 drivers for this decision. First, of course, sustainability. We've been leading sustainability in the Spanish port sector in Europe for many years, so we are convinced that this is one of the main reasons. Second one is efficiency, because we are convinced that being more efficient is being more carbon efficient too. And the third one, resilience, because also we are seeing that we are living complicated times. So the more we diversify our source of energy, the better. So we are also this big plan. We have a plan, a net zero plan. It's somehow similar with Manuel mentioned. We are working in alternative fuels. We are working in efficiency. We are working on OPS. We are working also in self-sufficiency. we are now producing 18% of our of the energy consumed with renewable sources, and we have planned for arriving at 51% of our energy produced inside with renewable energies, and we are also applying innovation to this. And I'm going to take more time.
Perfect. You bought us like 1 more minute for all the other questions. Thank you so much. Javier, to you, same question, but now bring it to the developing context. I know that you have some experience here. So what do you think as the same challenge for developing countries on this context?
Okay, thank you. I will try not to use the 3 minutes. Well, just to explain you also another story. In this case, in Port of Barcelona, we started supporting them in 2020 for all the energy transition plan. Okay, we did all the plan for the Port Authority, and also we developed all the engineering, basic engineering to all the infrastructures, like Manuel was saying before, that will support the Port Authority to also give support to the terminals to implement all the energy transition measures that were established by the Port Authority. All this knowledge we have applied later to other port authorities worldwide. But as you are mentioning, we want to focus on Latin America, and let's go to Chile in this case, okay? In where we were supporting Valparaiso Port Authority in the same way of Port of Barcelona, in the designing the strategy of the implementation of all the measures to do all the energy transition. That it depends on one side, on the land side, all what has to be developed in the port at the level of the Port Authority, but also on the sea side, what should be developed by the terminals and also the marine companies like the vessels. No, so this is the way. Okay, I think that in Europe we have a regulation. In other parts of the world there is no the regulation, but the shipping lines are the same globally. So if a shipping line is establishing some measures that will be used in Europe, the same standards sooner will arrive to the rest of the world. So I think that the ports globally has to be ready for this energy transition, because shipping lines will need this for all their supply chain.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ines, over to you. What can you tell us about ports beyond being energy hubs? What other types of port developments do you see coming and have is the greatest growth potential in the coming years?
Yes, so I also think it's a bit related to the next question. So how do we empower the economic growth and the jobs through ports? So we have an interesting experience in using ports as manufacturing hubs. And we have done this for the foundations of windmills, offshore windmills in Europe. There's a couple of good examples of how the manufacturing at the port made the whole investment much more efficient, less risky, and very attractive to private investment. So I think the idea of using port facilities to be able to manufacture is something that could be replicable to other sectors. We're also looking into how inland waterways and river ports in the region, particularly in Latin America, in countries like Brazil, Peru, or Uruguay or Paraguay, they can be an alternative to road transport, a very efficient one, and very much aligned with greener and less carbon-intensive transport. And we are following several initiatives and advising clients on how to do this potentially. And then maybe on a, let's say, smaller scale, we're also seeing quite an interest in more leisure ports. So marinas, for example, how that could link tourism and job creation in more touristic areas. Of course, it's a smaller investment, but it can also be very attractive to private investment. And we have an interesting experience in Florianopolis in Brazil in this model. And then finally, there's also, let's say, regions where they have smaller countries. They maybe don't have that much leverage for large port investments. And the coastal shipping makes more sense, and there could be more investments in promoting trade and logistics through that coastal shipping in those countries. So those are just some ideas, and they probably link to your last question.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And Jan, from the recent research that the World Bank Group has conducted, are there countries or regions that see particular potential to benefit from the energy transition?
Yeah, thanks. Very good question. Three thoughts. First, in terms of what is actually important, and I think the examples that Manuel and others gave here, you can actually group the impact on the energy transition, on decarbonization, in two buckets. The port itself can, of course, change its light bulbs and electrify and so on. But a 5 to 10 times bigger impact is what the port can do to help the ships. It's the ships that burn so much more fuel. And if the ports can help in that area, that's actually the far bigger impact. Both are important. Of course, we are very diplomatic. Thank you for changing the light bulbs, but it's even more important to help the ships decarbonize. So in that context, you asked me to pick winners. I hope I will still remain friends with the countries who I'm not going to list, but there has been some really good research case studies done by a fantastic team who is sitting there, case study on Colombia, on Morocco, on South Africa, looking at a combination of demand and supply. So there are places where the location and the position network makes them natural nodes that is there we should be bunkering. And on the supply side, the possibility to actually generate. So Brazil is another example, which has a lot of history and experience with biofuels. Chile with its wind, solar resources. Colombia mentioned. Egypt with its position. Morocco. Then Namibia and South Africa also with the renewable potential. Panama definitely from its position. Singapore is the current biggest hub, and Sri Lanka also. So sorry, I'm only not listing your countries because I don't have enough time. Otherwise, every country. Last very, very quick thought. Now, all this investment, the renewable, it needs some certainty. So if as long as we have this uncertainty about what will be the future technology, what will be the future carbon price, what will be the future regulation, so we feel quite strongly about the need for a predictable, ideally multilateral regulatory framework that encourages all these beautiful investments we are talking about here.
Okay, so let me propose the following. We are 9 minutes away, so I would like to see if there are any burning questions. There is one or a couple. So I think we have some one online, and then one in the floor. So let's start with the online one. And then please, if you want to move to the microphone.
Yeah, sorry. We have one question from Hakim Mohammed that says, how can smart port initiatives be scaled from individual ports to entire maritime corridors to strengthen supply chain resilience while supporting sustainable growth and job creation across connected regions?
Okay, that's a loaded question. I don't know who wants to answer, but let's hear the second one and maybe we can pack that. Let's start thinking about who's going to answer that one. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Great. My name is Cristina Contreras, and I represent a consulting company called Simpranova, focused in sustainable infrastructure. So my question is very much implicit into the name of the panel. So we know that the ports have a very massive opportunity for good, but as we are seeing in some regions, and also a massive opportunity for not as good. I just came back from Bolivia a few days ago, and all the conversations in the Amazon region is about how to connect the Amazon with Chancay in Peru. The same is happening in Brazil. So what can we do, if any, to really have this overview of the impact that we can have in deforestation and so on to avoid those massive social and environmental risks?
Okay. think, who would like to take a shot? The second one is for Jan. And the first one, who's going to take the first one? So you will start, and then you will warm up.
Okay. No, very quick thoughts on the two on the corridor issue, like linking the smart ports. It's actually a very valid point because no ship goes to just one port. Yeah, and a lot of the improvements, energy transition, all this what we want. They need to connect both ports need to be able to accommodate those ships. If they're different fuels, they have to provide the same fuel. There has to be actually cargo on that route. There's a lot to do with data exchange. So yes, it's actually a very good question that we more and more need to focus on the corridors instead of just one port. On the relatively specific question example with connecting the oceanic corridors and connecting to Shanghai, I'm sorry, I'm going to make enemies here, but if you look at the size of the Pacific, if you go directly from Peru to Hong Kong, option 1. Option B, you go first from Peru to Los Angeles and then to Hong Kong. Imagine the triangle in your head. How much longer is the triangle? 2%, 1%, because the Pacific is so big. So this whole idea of cutting trees and climbing up the Andean mountains to go to the Pacific coast, and I have made enemies in Mejillones, in Iquique, in Manta, in many places, it doesn't make much sense. So that would solve the problem of not cutting trees to go from the Amazon to Shanghai. Sorry about the comment. Thanks.
Thank you. And very interestingly, we are going to have a session, I think, on Thursday. No, this lasts for 2 days, no? So maybe tomorrow, on the Amazon. And precisely a study that we did a Thursday. Okay, it's a side event, so I was correct. It was a side event on basically the Amazon and what are the type of solutions to connect, first the infrastructure gaps to connect the Amazon, and what are the type of investments that we should be thinking about, or countries in the region should be thinking about to avoid precisely what you're saying, no, deforestation and the social impacts of impacting the Amazon. So that would be a great side event for us to discuss these topics. Okay, let me see. We have 5 more minutes, so we are great with time. And so that leaves us a little bit of space to go to the last question that I wanted to ask, is about this whole connection between ports, modernization, digitalization, transformation, and jobs. Better jobs, more jobs, or less jobs with the automation, and so on and so forth. So the good and bad, and where are the opportunities? So we have 5 minutes. Who would like to give me? You already gave, Ines, you already gave some good thoughts and ideas on this. I don't know if, perfect, Juan, please go ahead.
Well, yes, I think that there are, it was mentioned also this morning, it's, well, with ports happening with like another infrastructure, transport infrastructure, we are heavy employers now. We are in, for example, we are responsible for 50,000 jobs in the Valencian region, and we have our plan to increase that to in 2035 to become 80,000 jobs. But what is more important, they are very quality jobs. We know also that for every job created in the port area, 5 jobs are created outside and with activities connected with the port, which is much more than in many other sectors in the region, at least in our region. So we are convinced that working hard in the port will have a multiplier in the sector. And then on the other hand, we are tools for the economy. So if we are efficient, if we are really smart ports, okay, we are connected with logistics change, we will help our economies to produce more growth and more richness. And so it's probably more important that the jobs created in the port. And I will finish with, there's a colleague that say that we have to think about reskilling in the way that if we want to have smart ports, we will need smart people.
Okay, that's a very good thought. I hope that we have some more.
Just to complement this, fully agree. I think it's not talking about better, more or less job, is different jobs, okay? And I think that the marine industry, the ports industry has grown a lot in the last years, improving with a lot of technology. We have to remember that before the container appears, cargo was in a different way. Now we have different cranes, we have technology, and the sector has grown year by year. So I think that implementing new technologies, it's not meaning less jobs, it means growing, and growing means more jobs, in this case, different jobs.
Manuel, any last words from you?
No, one idea, at least from my experience, that multi-skills profile are also needed in the port sector. Multi-skills profile or multi-skills teams, because problems are getting very complex and very polyhedric. So we need, of course, there's room for the specialists. Of course, there's room for the specialists, but the solution provided must be holistic, because problems are very difficult. So we must get an holistic approach, and we have to know about sustainability, digitalization. When you design an infrastructure, you must know how it's going to be managed. It's going to be managed. So that's multi-skills.
Okay, excellent. You have 1 minute. Anything else to add? And if not, any last question? Okay, I was going to close on time. I hope that I can close on time. Please go ahead.
Very quick question. My name is Chung Tam. I'm from the Global Supply Chain Classroom, and we offer education to supply chain management to students around the world. One of the questions that we always ask is, how can industry work better with academia to produce the talent that you need? Like you talked about, not just you need workers, but you need different kind of workers, you need different kind of knowledge. How are you working with schools to produce those people?
Manuel,
well, we try to include academia in our ecosystem, and we have, for example, we have 2 chairs with the 2 main public university in Valencia, the Polytechnics and the General University, and one is dedicated exclusively to port innovation. And this is the idea is also to bring the academia, bring the student, but also the researchers, to learn more about the ports, and because we are convinced that there is basic research could allows us to create more innovation in the future and to have the skills that we need in the future. So.
Okay, stop. Okay, so we stop. Thank you so much. 4 o'clock. I want to just acknowledge that. Thank you so much to all of you. I really appreciate the time that you have invested in us, and I please ask for a round of applause for our speakers, and we finish this session.